I'm Dave Palumbo, founder of Species Nutrition. From my earliest bodybuilding days, I believed in only putting the best in my body. And that lives on in the Species Nutrition line of products. I put my name and reputation on every bottle of Species Nutrition products. If you want to be your absolute best, join the evolution.
Hey guys, we're super excited to be here at the LA Fit Expo. It's our third year in a row. And what we're going to be doing today is we're going to be launching a tasty pastry. It's a low-carb Pop-Tart. It's got 3 to 4 grams of net carbs. And we love this show. This is our best place to be in LA.
If you want to build a massive chest, you have to stop bench pressing right now.
Welcome to Heinz Senior's Coaching App. Get access to the P3AK High Intensity Training ebook and its exclusive video tutorials. Commit with Heinz's coaching right now and be provided with a year of meal plans, training programs, and more. www.p3akday.com. There is no room for the littles.
RX Television on RxMuscle.com. This is Ask Dave, better known as hashtag Ask Dave. You know the deal, your 30-minute question and answer show with Dave Palumbo. All your questions, bodybuilding, non-bodybuilding related, of course, the Arnold Classic next weekend. Amazing to think, but now you're starting to see the final stages of some of the top competitors. I mean, a couple of weeks ago, Brett Wilkin dropped that big warning shot. Justin Rodriguez posting dailies. We're seeing Brandon Curry out in Oxygen Gym, and, some think that this may be the best Brandon Curry that we're going to see on the Arnold Classic stage next week. And so a lot to look forward to. Of course, we're going to have our team out there. I'm not going to be there just to dispel any whatever thoughts or rumors or whatever, but I'm going to be in London. It's my cousin's wedding. I'm going to be in London, but I will be managing our team remotely. So it'll be around 3 a.m. my time, which will be in London. But we're going to have a great team. We're going to have John Hansen, Chris Aceto. So, immense amounts of experience between those two. We're going to have our videographer, Leo Cassiano, who's been helping us out at the last 2 Olympias. So, you're going to get great social media shots. And then, of course, excellent video quality for all of our wrap-ups and the athlete interviews. And then, of course, maybe the best pit photographer in the game right now, Ralph Noble. He's going to be a man in the pits for us. So we're going to have excellent coverage between RxMuscle.com, our social media, and then, of course, our YouTube channel. Let's go to the questions. Of course, the first 2 questions on this show from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, does the body continue to release its own natural HGH if you're injecting HGH? And then it goes on to say, and how best time it if it is so?
First of all, I have to say, in all the history of all the friends I've had over the years, Sid goes to more weddings than any human being I've ever noticed. Since I've known you must have gone to at least 25 weddings. I don't think most people go to even 5 weddings in their entire life, but you guys have a lot of weddings in your family. So have a good time in London, of course. And the Dave Palumbo Experience app is something that if you guys are interested in, you could download from your iTunes store or your Android store. And it's basically Dave Palumbo as your coach in your pocket on your phone. And it's $29 a month. You get all my writings I've ever done, all my videos I've ever done in one place. You get a workout of the week. You get to ask me unlimited questions on an open forum where I openly answer everyone's questions and answers. You can see them. And then I do a Q&A video every week exclusively for the app. So it's good stuff. Here's one of the questions we got of the week. And the question is, I always thought the same thing. We think about testosterone working on a feedback loop, meaning that if you take testosterone, a certain percentage converts to estrogen. The estrogen goes back to the hypothalamus in your brain. It shuts down gonadotropic releasing hormone, which then shuts down luteinizing hormone from the pituitary, which then shuts down the testicles. So you think, all right, if you take testosterone, you don't produce any. Doesn't work that way with protein hormones like insulin or GH, because those hormones are produced in a pulsatile manner according to blood sugar levels and according to sleep cycles. So like GH is released at night. When you go to sleep, it's pulsed. You can't stop that from happening. GH is released in response to exercise. You can't stop that. GH is released in response to sometimes low blood sugar. You can't change that. So taking exogenous GH, is not going to shut down your natural production. Now, if you took it right before, that's why I don't tell people to take it before bed. If you take it right before bed, your body might not produce as much of its own in that one pulse. So I always take the GH when your body doesn't naturally produce it, which is in the morning. And that's the best time because now you're adding another level of growth and fat mobilization that your body wouldn't normally have in the morning. It's silly to take it after you train or right before you go to bed because that's when your body is naturally producing it. So just like insulin, if your body is not producing enough insulin, you're running high blood sugars and you take insulin, you're not shutting down your own insulin production. You're just taking the burden off the pancreas to have to produce as much insulin as it was. And it wasn't, and obviously if you were running high blood sugars, you weren't producing enough anyway. So protein hormones like that can't be shut down as easily. Now, thyroid is a protein hormone that works on a simple feedback loop. You take thyroid, you shut down some of your own production. But insulin and GH do not work like that.
Second question again from the Dave Palumbo Experience app. Dave, do you feel like, we do get this question about natural sweeteners. Do you feel that natural sweeteners like Splenda can affect, interesting, the guy Florea negatively?
Gut flora, I think he means.
Okay, so I thought he was going in a totally different direction.
No, I think he's talking about the gut. He wants to know if like artificial sweeteners negatively influence the gut. Yeah. Some people claim who have like Crohn's disease or colitis that too much artificial sweeteners will upset their bacterial flora. Now you got to remember the bacterial flora, or the probiotic organisms that live in the colon and the small intestine, they feed off of whatever the foods we're eating. They prefer as a food source fiber. They like soluble fiber. They ferment it. That's why taking a product like Fiberlyze is so good because not only does it give you a healthy colon, but it actually feeds the gut bacteria and keeps them really healthy. If you're like on a real low carb diet and your gut bacteria is not so great to begin with because you might have colitis or an irritable bowel or some kind of autoimmune disease down there, and you're only feeding your gut artificial sweeteners, the gut bacteria might try to use those as a fuel source because you're not giving it what it needs, in certain cases. And so sometimes that could, basically you're giving them a food source they can't use. They may die off. You might make your colitis or whatever kind of bowel issue you have worse. But that's a very specialized scenario. Now, if you're eating the right foods and you're taking a fiber supplement, on a regular basis, and even if you have, your gut bacteria is not ideal and you're taking probiotics, that shouldn't matter. So it's not the artificial sweeteners that necessarily cause the problem. It's the diet in conjunction with them that can sometimes irritate it. That's not to say that there are some people out there, maybe a 0.5% of the population, that just don't do well with artificial sweeteners. But for the majority of people, that's not something you have to worry about.
Let's go to our Instagram questions. Again, if you're not already following us, our handle is official_RxMuscle. We just talked about the upcoming Arnold Classic, which is next weekend. If you haven't already done so, subscribe to our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification bell. You're not going to miss anything between now and that weekend in Columbus. Again, we're going to have a great on-site crew with John Hansen and Chris Aceto anchoring the coverage. So you're not going to miss anything they have going on there. We're going to, offer, as always, offer wall-to-wall coverage of the Arnold Classic. Before we get to the questions, actually, just wanted to pass our condolences. We posted on our Instagram this morning, Isaac Qavidel from Iran, a bodybuilder who been battling, he had sarcoma, I believe, cancer for the last 2 years. He passed away. Generation Iron Persia reported earlier in the morning that was reflected across, the entire bodybuilding, especially amongst the Persian bodybuilders. And King Kamali posted something about it earlier, but very, very sad news. I know, Dave, we had posted a GoFundMe for him about a year and a half ago.
Yeah, when he got sick. Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so very sad news. So, how many times we've done this, but, it never, it always bears repeating that we always keep, our brothers in iron in mind, in our hearts, and we wish nothing but the best for his family.
Absolutely.
And for his supporters all around Iran, around the bodybuilding world. So rest in peace, Isaac Qavidel. Let's go to the questions. Keenan Goesco, not really sure when's the last time we talked about. I know you have discussed in the past the carnivore diet. Your thoughts on the carnivore diet?
We've discussed this before. The carnivore diet is very comparable or similar to the ketogenic diet. that I recommend, the performance ketogenic diet, it's high protein, it's, moderate fat, and it's, it's basically no carbs essentially. The problem is it's only meats. And whenever I see extreme diets like this, I always say, I roll my eyes right away, because anything that's too extreme in one direction is never the right answer. Okay. Does it work? I'm sure it mechanistically works, because hormonally it's creating the right environment at low insulin. You're in a state of ketosis, so the brain feels good. But why leave out some, green leafy vegetables that don't have a lot of carbs? Why leave out good fat sources? Red meat really doesn't have a lot of fat sources. Even if you eat, all grass-fed, you're still missing some stuff. Why not have some ability to have some macadamia nut oil or olive oil or some omega-3 eggs or wild-caught salmon? It's very restrictive, and that's the problem I have with it. Once again, it works just like the Atkins diet worked, even though the Atkins diet was like all cream and mostly fat. But the bottom line is, do you want to eat a performance diet that's going to not only help you lose body fat, but have you be healthy too? And I think that's the point of difference. My ketogenic diet addresses health issues, cholesterol, it addresses fiber, it addresses all the things that your body needs, not only to lose weight and retain muscle, but also to be healthy. And so that's why I think the balance of that diet is off.
Go to Neil Zalewski. There seems to be a shift in how bodybuilders train recently. Many are switching from higher volume, less intense style to a high intensity, less volume style training. Do you believe this shift will produce better physiques, or is the difference negligible?
Every 5 or 10 years, the shift, this one person comes out and says, this is the way to train, and people change. I was from the Dorian Yates era, less volume, higher intensity, heavier weight, worked great for my body. My body loved it because I overtrain very easily. I put on a lot of mass with that diet. I know a lot of other guys that put a lot of mass. And I'm not talking one set like Menser was doing. I'm talking, instead of doing 20 sets, you're doing 12 sets, and you're really focused on lifting maximum weights with good form and full range of motion. I think that's the best way to build muscle. I'm not saying that you can't build muscle doing higher reps and stuff like that, because there are guys out there that respond to that. But for the majority of people that are, quote, semi-normal and not genetic freaks, most people need to lift heavy weights, heavy free weights, that is, with full range of motion. Otherwise, they're not going to get the development that they're looking for. And I'll always say that that's the best way. But it's not the only way, and I understand that. And some people have injuries they have to work around. But assuming that you're healthy and that you can do anything in the gym, there's no restrictions, I think heavy weights, less volume works better. Let's
go to bodybuilding and wrestling. Dave, your thoughts on EMS training? Not sure what that is, but I'll go on. I know you're old school, but will it help to stimulate the muscles a bit more with weight loss on top of your normal training for regular people, not quote unquote bodybuilders?
I think he's talking about what Brad Rowe does with those pads, those electrical muscular stimulation pads, EMS pads, and training with them. So the pad is actually releasing electricity and it's causing the muscles to contract. So supposedly you get a better contraction when you're training. I tell a story about that. Back in the early 90s, they had these machines, the pads, and you'd sit there. I would study when I was in med school, and I put these pads on my calves because I want my calves to grow, and it would just make my muscles and my calves contract so hard. And I would wear this thing for like an hour. It was like a torture device because I wanted my calves to grow so much. Did it make my calves grow? I don't think so, but it might have given me a better mind-muscle connection there because I was able to feel the contraction of the calves a little bit. But it's a tool. It's a tool. You're not going to build massive amounts of muscle with that. If you have an injury and you're coming back from a sore joint, or when I had torn my quad and I was rehabbing, I used to do EMS as at the end of my physical therapy session, just to kind of get that muscle contracting and get back into gear and create that mind-muscle connection again, and the nervous system connection. I think it's good for rehab. I don't really think anyone's building any muscle with it.
Let's go to pipes. So last week we had Jon Bravo. Does he go by Jon Bravo or Johnny Bravo?
He calls himself Johnny Bravo, but I usually call him
Johnny Bravo. Yeah, great addition to After Hours. He brought up the story about Rich Piana and about him taking silicone. So I'll go to the question. Do you honestly believe Jon Bravo's story about Rich Piana and the silicone? There seems to be more truth to the PMMA. Even Scott Mendelson has spoke about it after his infamous pec tear. Rich offered his own advice to fix it, to go down to Mexico and get the PMMA, and Scott declined the offer.
I think the PMMA was originally what Rich did, and I don't think it produced, and I don't know this for sure, but this is what I hear. I don't think it produced quite the size increase that Rich wanted. I don't personally know that Rich injected silicone, although several people have told me that he did. Was it the reason he died? I don't believe that. I really don't. But there's no way to really prove it because there's no other cause of death on the autopsy that would indicate what killed him. So maybe it did. I don't know. Maybe he took a bad shot of it and dropped. Greg Valentino swears that he knew people that used it like for butts and stuff like that, and making body parts more voluptuous, I guess you could say. And he said he's seen people actually die from taking those shots. So was that the cause of death? There's no way to say that that's definitive is really doing a disservice to him, because we don't really know that that's the case. Did he do silicone? I never saw him do it, but is it possible? Yeah. I mean, look at the guy. The guy was huge. I mean, it's a definite possibility. There's a lot of people who inject silicone, but it is very dangerous. And if you watch After Hours, Greg gives a very, very good dissertation on why it is deadly and why you shouldn't do it. So, like I said, out of respect for Rich's mom, I'm very good friends with her. I'm not going to speculate on this because I just don't know. But obviously, if anyone's considering doing it, I wouldn't recommend it.
Let's go to C. Murphy. How can I reset my BMR without blowing up and gaining a bunch of fat in the process? Basically, I eat too little. I need to start eating a lot more. Should I go about it methodically, or should I just start eating at the desired calorie range right away?
If you're under eating, you should bring your calories or your protein and fat and carbs up to what it needs to be metabolically speaking. If you know for a fact that you're not eating enough and your body is, and you're cold all the time and your metabolism is shut down, then it's silly. It's silly if you continue to do that, because you're not going to make any progress. So start slowly increasing your food and find the sweet spot of where you're actually now all of a sudden your metabolism is moving again. You're losing body fat. You're maybe repairing muscle better, but yet you're not eating too much where you're actually gaining fat. And I think that's a trial and error thing. And that's where coaches come in. A lot of my coaching with a lot of the clients I work with, these guys are very knowledgeable. They have all their own clients. And you'd be like, well, what did that person need you as a coach? Because you can't advise yourself. It's hard to take a step back and look at yourself and say, all right, what's the right thing to do? And that's why you need a second set of eyes. And you know what? If I was competing nowadays, I probably have a coach too, because I made a lot of stupid decisions because I was overdoing things and overthinking things. And so when it comes to yourself, it's very hard to advise. So that's why I can totally see you eating too little food. You think, I'll just keep taking away food. I'll get leaner and leaner and leaner. But at some point, you shut your metabolism down, which seems like is what happened to you.
Tillervation. Thoughts on doing one-arm dumbbell rows on a bench as opposed to holding on to something?
It really is whatever your personal preference is what you feel better. I like to kind of lean over a dumbbell rack and do them. I always just felt more secure, because the rack wasn't moving anywhere, whereas the bench kind of is a little wobbly. But you make do with what you have. I even do one-arm rows with a cable handle one at a time. Sometimes I feel like I feel that a little bit more. But back in the day, I always did my one-arm rows. Put my one arm on the dumbbell rack, and I lean over, and I would do my rows right there, which makes it very convenient because you can put the dumbbell right back on the rack when you're done. You don't have to drop it on the floor. So that's just how I did them.
Ivan Banyanets, what are your thoughts on the, quote, new school ways of doing cardio? Some new bodybuilders like John Jewett are only measuring their steps throughout the day, not doing fasted cardio or maintaining a heart rate. They say it's only calorie burning. So I'm not sure if that's really exclusive to him or if you've seen this as a trend, again, the new school trend.
Yeah, I think John Jewett has got a very, very blessed metabolism. He's probably comparable to what I'm, my metabolism. The guy, I've never seen the guy out of shape. So, for him, that might work. Hey, you know what? I'm doing 10,000 steps a day. I don't need to do any cardio because I'm gonna wither away. So for him, that works. For most people, that's not enough. I have people tell me, oh, I'm on my job, I do 15,000 steps a day, and they're fat. You know, they don't lose weight because it's not continuous. That's the problem. You start, you stop, you rest. That's not how your body burns fat, you know. You need to continuously move. You know, if you were constantly moving for 20, 30 minutes straight, you know, then you could probably count that as cardio. But if you're not, I know guys that go outside and walk, or girls that go outside and walk, and they don't, and I'm like, you know, when you're walking, are you in a park or are you like out? Well, I walk outside. I said, well, in the city. I'm like, you're in New York City, so you must be stopping at traffic lights. Well, yeah, you gotta wait till the light change. I said, well, then you're not doing continuous cardio. Well, I try to walk in place. I said, look, just get on a treadmill and walk. You know, sometimes when you go outside too, and you're very low carbs, you can bang into things and trip. You're better off staying in a controlled environment when you're doing your cardio. That's just the way I feel. And you know what? You can measure it. It's quantifiable. If I'm giving you 30 minutes of cardio to do and you're losing weight, then I know that's enough. If you're telling me, well, I'm doing about 10,000 steps a day, some days I don't get that much, some days I do more. I can't quantify that, and I can't tell you, all right, walk another 1,000 steps. There's no way to figure out that, but I can do it with cardio. So I wouldn't count that as cardio.
Time for 2-3 more questions. AJ49, thoughts on chromium picolinate for insulin sensitivity?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this, but I think it's warrant mentioning again because I obviously a lot of people confused by it. Back in the 80s, they did some studies and they found that a lot of people were chromium deficient. And they found that when you're chromium deficient, your insulin doesn't work well. So in other words, chromium is what they call the glucose tolerance factor. It's a cofactor. So insulin can't bind to its receptors and push sugar into the blood, into the muscle cells without chromium being present. Now, most people are not chromium deficient, but if you are chromium deficient and your body can't get the blood sugar into the cells because there's not enough chromium around, your body's going to think there's not enough insulin, right? So it's going to release more insulin, which is not going to solve the blood sugar problems, but having excessive insulin in your blood can make you get fat. Okay, so they found that in people who were chromium deficient, when they restored chromium, levels to normal, that all of a sudden people were losing weight. So they assumed, oh, well, chromium must cause weight loss, but it doesn't. It's just only if you're deficient in it. And like I said, anyone who takes a good quality multivitamin, like even V-Mineralize, you don't need a lot of it. You only need like 200 micrograms a day. You definitely want to take a chelated form of chromium, like a chromium polynicotinate or chromium picolinate, because it's the most absorbable type. But assuming you're taking a good multivitamin with it in it, no one's chromium deficient. So taking extra is not going to make you drop weight easily. It's not going to help reduce your blood sugar levels. It's not a blood sugar lowering mineral. It just helps insulin do its job properly. And when the levels are normal, that you can't go beyond that taking more.
Let's go to AJ49. The pros and cons of the ECA stack, ECA versus CLEN.
Right. ECA being ephedra, caffeine, aspirin, and sometimes they even put grapefruit extract in there, which helps the caffeine and the ephedra last longer. I never used it, okay? I didn't like to be overstimulated by ephedra. I know there's a lot of people who love stimulants out there. If you have to compare ephedra and caffeine to clenbuterol, clenbuterol wins every time. There's no fat burner on the market anywhere, as far as I know, maybe DNP, which is going to kill you. Aside from that, there's no fat burner that's better than clenbuterol. It really has, once you get past the first 2 weeks, it really has no side effects either. And I feel like it's a pure fat burner. It mobilizes the most fat. And it works fast too. Like the first 2 to 4 weeks, you can burn a lot of fat on clenbuterol. And you don't need to take a lot of it, and you can ramp up very slowly. You can ramp down. I like it much better. You can't take ephedra and clenbuterol at the same time, however, because they compete for the same receptor, the same beta receptor. And since clenbuterol is a better fat burner than ephedra, you don't want ephedra getting in the way of clenbuterol binding to its receptor, because then it's not going to work as well. So you have to kind of pick one or the other. Guys have said, well, I do 2 days of ephedra, 2 days of clenbuterol. That's really not going to solve your problem with clenbuterol, because you're still stimulating the same beta receptor. So you're not giving your beta receptors any rest. So just take the clenbuterol every day.
Take one more question. So we do get this question fairly often. I try not to ever make this show about me or really any programs that we do about me, but we do get the question often as far as how Dave and I met. So typically we see Sid once a week and so on and so forth. All right. So for one, You see, I'm still, I've been in temporary digs essentially from the beginning of the pandemic, right? I'm not going to get too deep into the whole story, but I am going to have a new studio. We're literally setting it up right now, building it out right now. This is probably going to be the last episode you're going to see with this kind of a backdrop. Yeah. Next week, you're going to see, somewhat different. But nonetheless, the reason I say that is because I'm going to be featuring a lot more in the programs. We're going to restart Iron Debate. We're going to start, some of those programs where I play the moderator, and we get to have Dave as an opinion giver, as a commentator, as opposed to a moderator and all that. So, that was the original intent of Iron Debate when we started it. So, but nonetheless, you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. So I will figure to be on the channel more than once a week. But nonetheless, how did I meet Dave? So I'm going to give you the quick skim notes version, just because, again, nobody needs 4 minutes of Sadiq Baruchi talking about his involvement with RxMuscle. But so it was about 2013 or so. I get a call from a recruiter that I had worked with, who's gotten me previous jobs. Said that there's a company. So Dave and I both. So Dave's obviously originally from Long Island. I'm on Long Island, born and raised in Long Island. So she said there is a company based in Westbury in Nassau County in Long Island. They have a supplement company. She didn't really know much about it, but they make protein shakes. They did this, they did that. But that they also had a TV network. She really didn't know much about it, but it has something to do with bodybuilding. She's like, just go in there, have a conversation with them, and you never know. You never know what'll happen, right? You never know what could come of this. So I go in, and the first meeting that I went, Dave was not there. It was his previous CEO at the time, and then I met Amanda as well. I met Johnny Styles, Kareen. So I got to meet the office staff, everyone but Dave. So, meanwhile, I'm walking around the offices, and I'm seeing posters of Dave Palumbo's 300-pound behemoth walking around. I'm thinking to myself, like, I'm going to meet this guy. This guy's going to eat me for lunch or whatever, right? So second time I go in, I meet Dave, right? Now, I was kind of told what to go in and tell Dave because, they're like, well, otherwise Dave's going to think you're just wasting his time. So I sit down, I'm like, originally the conversation was about species nutrition, right? And how I'm going to help with the marketing and so on and so forth. But Dave kind of had this look in his face like, here we go again. Another kid sitting there telling me about, how they're going to help with my supplement company and so on and so forth. Another marketer off the street. So I could tell he wasn't really moved. But then the conversation quickly shifted to RxMuscle. And I told Dave, I'm like, Dave, look, I happen to have a background in TV, sports. That's really sort of what I've been building over the last decade or so. That's when his eyes lit up. And that's when he was like, look, we are trying to build a network here about, to cover the bodybuilding sports. And then the conversation started, and then the spark started to fly. And, if you think back to, and I'm not going to go too much of a tangent, but we're on YouTube right now. Give or take about a decade ago, right? Bodybuilding media was still website based. So that's what we were trying to do. We were trying to make it a website based, RxMuscle.com, trying to make it a perpetual 24-hour stream with all original content, right? Because that's when Dave decided to start to go away from contest coverage and go into original programming. So that's where everything started to, form, in the identity that we have RxMuscle now, right? In the beginning, it was just Heavy Muscle TV, which was at the time, and the Fitness View, the women's talk show. Yeah. What we eventually started to do is start to figure, all right, what's working, what's not working, what can we tweak, what can we fix, what can we add? And that's when we started to add Iron Debate. That was really the first, feature studio show about, bodybuilding topics that are hot. That eventually, we formed Ask Dave. We were like, look, Dave, you get a million questions on, the forum, which, God bless, the forum, which you have to type out all these responses to. Why don't we do a TV show where I ask you the questions, we're getting the questions anyway, and then you get to answer in that format. We get to add it to our programming. Boom, there we go. So on and so forth, it went, and that's kind of where we are today. But that is, in a nutshell, how I met Dave, how this relationship has formed, and how we have built what we have built with RxMuscle 2013 to now, and what we look for going beyond. Dave, did I miss anything?
No, I knew that Sid could pretty much do anything sports related. He just didn't know the players in bodybuilding, but I've never seen anyone learn quicker than he did. He knew the name. He, within a year, knew every name in the industry, pretty much every gossip story in the industry, and he actually was bringing stuff to me sometimes that, oh, did you hear so and so? So you're definitely, I mean, that's why you're so good at your sports announcing, because you can do any sport, you pick it up very quickly, and you go with it. And I think we had a good chemistry right from the beginning, so that helps. Sometimes if you don't have chemistry with a person, it doesn't matter how good each person is, but it doesn't raise the level of what you're trying to do. So. Look, sometimes I always say when you're ready to meet the right person to do something special with, they appear. And I think you appear just as I needed you. And because I needed someone to anchor, I needed another Dave basically to anchor and to help elicit all the information that, I had and that other people had. And when we brought, people on, it wasn't good enough. In other words, I want to be on Iron Debate as a guy who's debating. I don't want to be the moderator of the event. So that's something that you're really good at. And so it was just, it was the right time at the right place. And I couldn't be happier with, everything that you've produced for the site over the years.
I appreciate that. So again, like I said, that's sort of where we are right now. But, over the course of the next few weeks, you could expect a lot more expansion of our overall programming. Right now, the staples, obviously, Ask Dave, our live Heavy Muscle Radio, after hours, Iron Rage with Lee. By the way, Lee Priest, for those of you who don't know, Lee Priest now the newest Species Nutrition Elite Pro athlete. So we're excited to have him on board. We just ran a sale. I mean, blew numbers out. So obviously, bodybuilding world reacting very positively to Lee Priest joining us. So we're very excited about that. Obviously we're talking about one of the true legends of the sport, the greatest bodybuilder that Australia has ever produced. Someone with as a unique personality as he has and as accomplished as he has. So, I mean, we really could not have found a better fit for the Species Nutrition family. So on behalf of Species Nutrition, welcome Lee, and we can't wait to see what we're going to do over the course of the next few months and over the course of the next few years. So that's going to do for this episode of Ask Dave. For Tyler Shore, Dave Palumbo, I'm Sadiq Faruqi. We'll see you next week.